Welcome back to the Thom Hartmann Program. I'm Alex Lawson, filling in for Tom, and I'm really pleased to be joined in studio by my business partner, Kymone Freeman, co-owner of We Act Radio. I'm the executive director of Social Security Works. I also co-own We Act Radio with Kymone because we both understand that the global oligarchy, their control of the corporate media, is a key to their maintaining and growing their power.
It's a secret to their power, actually. And we are looking at a situation where in this country, Fox News is like the #1 news agency. But the courts have ruled in the case of Fox News and Monsanto that they are not legally obligated to report the truth. They have a moral obligation, not a legal obligation. And this is the #1 news source in America.
So the yes, and the corporate media, they not only misinform actively. We were talking about this. Tom wrote this piece at Alternet. They were talking about America's TV media crisis goes far beyond covering Trump. We simply aren't hearing about the most pressing issues of our time.
Exactly.
And as you know, which is why when we launched our radio station, we launched it with Thom Hartmann because he is a unstoppable truth teller who understands it's not just about the false stories that we do see. It is as much, if not more, about the stories that they don't tell. That is one of the main facets of control. And I want to get to one of the stories that you almost never hear because there's 2 anniversaries today.
Right.
Today, there are 2 anniversaries. One of them is it's the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's speech Beyond Vietnam. What is the other one, and tell us about it.
Well, first, before I go there, I just want to mention that Thom Hartmann's production, we sit here in Washington, D.C., and We Act Radio is the only station that carries Thom Hartmann in Washington, D.C. That speaks volumes to why we're here as well. The Beyond the Vietnam speech is the speech that got Martin Luther King killed, and that's according to the late, great Dr. Vincent Gordon Harding, who authored the speech Beyond Vietnam, who we had the pleasure on We Act Radio to be the last interview that he did, and that's where he acknowledged that. People can go on to We Act Radio's Facebook page, support our fundraiser that we're launching right now, join the opposition, and they can actually hear that interview we had with Dr. Harding that authored that speech. And also 1 year to the date, April 4th, 1967, Riverside Church in New York is where Martin Luther King broke with the establishment. And April 4th, 1968, as we all know, 1 year to the date, he was assassinated while under FBI surveillance in Memphis, Tennessee.
Which happens more often than you would. I don't want to go on a tangent, but like how almost universally they're African-American folks under FBI surveillance who are then assassinated or murdered, and yet they can't find the killer.
Exactly.
You're wondering what's going on there. How can he be? It must not have been that great surveillance, but we know it was.
Yeah.
We know it was. But let me actually just keep on this one. So what was in the Beyond Vietnam speech? What was he talking about that many people think led to him being assassinated?
Well, let me just say this, and I hate to quote Van Jones because, you know, we're now in a situation where even Van Jones has now, you know, complimented Trump. But he did a good job in the documentary film 13th, and that was from the filmmakers that brought us Selma, by the way. And in that movie, in that documentary, he said that you can talk about the entire history of white leadership in this country, the entire history of it, and not once mention the FBI. But you can't find one black leader in this country, in its history, and not talk about the FBI. Having said that, Beyond Vietnam was the anti-war speech. That is what broke him the cover. He was actually, as Dr. Vincent Harding says, was told not to give this speech. He was told that this would be detrimental to the movement. He was attacked by Time Magazine, Washington Post. They called him a bumbling idiot. He was no longer useful to his people. The last year of his life, he wasn't even allowed to speak in churches. Black churches wouldn't allow Martin Luther King to speak in because it was bad for business. And here we are in the same situation when we talk about Trump, because there's certain things that we won't do or won't say or speak out against because it's bad for business. You know, so I think that I think people should go back and listen to his speech today. And of course, they should also join the opposition party and support the work that we're doing. And hear that interview we had with the author of that speech that speaks volumes to these issues.
Kymone is going to keep talking about the fundraiser that We Act Radio is doing, because I have made sure that we mention it multiple times.
Absolutely.
And you can go to weactradio.com, click Join the Opposition Party, and help us continue truth-telling in the nation's capital. Our studio is in Anacostia. We have a storefront
on Martin Luther King Avenue.
On MLK. We have a storefront studio, broadcasting truth to power from the banks of the Anacostia directly into the halls of power. I want to talk about one more thing, or a few more, with MLK, and then I want to take some calls as well. But when he was assassinated, when he was murdered, when he was silenced by a conspiracy, and it has been ruled a conspiracy.
Yes, there were millions of dollars awarded to his family for that conspiracy.
The court has ruled to his family that it is a conspiracy. When he was silenced by this conspiracy, he was actually down, fighting for wages.
That's right.
He was fighting for economic justice. So tell us a little bit about that aspect, because that is, right now, I feel like they still do a good job of trying to divide it, right? That you can only talk about this side, but not this side. And in fact, you have to talk about economic justice and anti-racism or identity politics or whatever people, the conception that they have, but civil rights and economic justice together. They are only exist together. You can't have civil rights and freedom if you don't have the economic freedom necessary to live.
Exactly. I mean, what good is it, he said, quoting Martin Luther King right now, what good is it to have the ability to sit down at the lunch counter if you can't pay the bill? And there we have it. So his last actions was the Poor People campaign, which actually predates the Occupy Wall Street. They was coming to the nation's capital, and they was going to occupy the mall until the check that was marked insufficient funds was cashed and honored. And so that the people who were actually suffered the most under American democracy will actually be made whole. And when he was assassinated by a former FBI agent who was also the police chief of Nashville, Memphis, Tennessee. Just want to point that out. And he was there to fight for the workers, sanitation workers. I'm wearing a shirt in honor of that. I am a man is what they had to say.
And he was standing in solidarity with AFSCME, the union, who was marching with the sanitation workers, the public employees, who, were saying, we need higher wages. And
I just want to shout out that he was a little bit successful in that regard, because now our sanitation workers make more than our teachers.
Well, I think that it's the pitting anyone against each other. We need to have everybody.
I think everyone should have a living wage.
Yeah, and I think that this is where you see sometimes the liberalism kind of crash onto the shoals of economic justice. And I've been told, to quiet down every once in a while because.
Well, congratulations. That means you've been effective.
I agree with you. Also, I'm like, what did you say? But it's when you demand money for the people, for the many, that is when a lot of formerly, and I'm not going to throw them, they say they're all bad people, but you have a lot of, left politicians, Democratic politicians who are with you right up until you make that quote unquote unreasonable ask, right? Where the rich should pay more in taxes and the people should have the benefits. So increased Social Security, Medicare covering everybody, a $15 minimum wage, and going to higher education for free. How about schools that work across the entire city, not just in one part of the city, but public education that works for everybody and is not under attack by billionaires? It's oftentimes there when you're like, whoa, hold on, it's not reasonable.
I take exception to all of that because, we're in a situation where Goldman Sachs is the Secretary of Treasury. ExxonMobil is Secretary of State. A reality TV star is in the White House. Breitbart is in the White House. Fox News is the press secretary. And you're telling us that we're unreasonable?
Right.
Really?
Right.
I mean, so it goes into this whole thinking that the profit margin is on the side of destroying the planet, and there's very little profit margin in saving the planet, which is why progressive outlets such as this are underfunded.
And why we all need to stand together, come together, support the truth tellers, support Thom Hartmann's program, support We Act Radio. Go to weactradio.com, join the opposition party. When we raise our voices together, we are unstoppable. And that's why they try to divide us and not let us stand together. Kymone's sticking with us through the break. We'll be right back after this on the Thom Hartmann Program.